One. Hello.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. Now that we have a different format, we'll see how this goes.
Mhm.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it should be fun.
So, chapter 4, here we go.
Chapter 4,
What did you think?
profound, I think is a word that came to mind. It's a really interesting chapter.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Are you much of a biology geneticist type of a brain?
Not at all.
Okay.
No. What about you?
Um, with the adoptee lens, I've always kind of been interested in my own genetics, in the sense of oh, how much of my personality right now could be attributed to biology, like what's biologically Asian and inherently Asian about me because I was raised by white people. That's always been a big factor in my life. Um, but thinking that way apparently is racist,
Yeah, according to Kendi, yeah.
according to Kendi.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was looking into just the history between the Black community and healthcare in the US. And so they were talking about how historically the belief that Black bodies are different from white bodies was used to help discriminate against Black people. And it brought up this terrible conflict between healthcare and the Black community. But I mean, I agree with you. I think there are some substantial differences between different ethnicities in their makeup. So yeah, I was shocked to hear that his take is that that's actually inherently racist.
So what's interesting is chapter 5 is ethnicity. Like,
Mm.
did that ever confuse you when we were in our program or anything like that? I always mixed up race and ethnicity. I still,
Yeah, to this day, absolutely.
yeah. How would you describe race and ethnicity as two separate definitions?
For me, ethnicity is tied to culture. It's tied to specifically countries, and race is the color of the skin to me.
Yeah.
So you can have the same race but be of different ethnicity. You know?
Oh no.
We'll play through. It's fine.
I don't know if we'll ever get over this audio curse. Oh, you were saying, I'm so sorry.
No, no worries. I just think to me you can be the same race but of different ethnicities. It's strictly the color of your skin, race. Ethnicity is culture, country, specifically what makes up a lot of your morals, your values, and your culture.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So, what's interesting is whenever I was a baby, people would always ask my parents, is she going to grow up with an accent? How are you going to speak to her if she doesn't, if she's Chinese and you're talking English to her? And my dad's like, well, she's a baby, so she's going to develop English because that's kind of how language works. But he would always describe my ethnicity as a Southern Texan,
Okay.
which honestly, I do still say y'all. That is one of the only
Right.
Texan qualities that I am extremely proud of, I guess,
Mhm.
is the inclusivity within the pronoun of y'all. It's the most gender
Mhm.
inclusive one.
Shout out to y'all.
Yes. Um, so I've always thought that race and ethnicity was such an interesting concept, just also because on standardized testing, like the SAT and the ACT, I put white.
Okay.
I was just being a dumb teenager. I was like, I have a white girl name. I'm going to put that I'm white. And a lot of times my dad would and my mom would always recognize me more as white, which is just kind of an overall erasure of like my biological background, which is Chinese, but saying that my biological background is Chinese is racist because that is my ethnic background. It is not
Mm,
my biology. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and read the actual definition that he puts for a
yes.
biological racist on here, which I thought was so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, a biological racist is one who is expressing the idea that races are meaningfully different in their biology and that these differences create a hierarchy of value.
Mm-hmm.
And a biological anti-racist is one who's expressing the idea that races are meaningfully the same in their biology and there are no genetic racial differences. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Profound is still the word I would use to describe this.
Very. Like, what? Whenever he spoke about like that example of them saying certain races can be more athletic than others.
Mhm.
A common one that I've heard about Asians is Asians are good at math. That's just a very racist concept. And I've heard it coined positive racism, which we know no racism. Like, there is no good, positive anything about racism.
No.
So even though saying someone is more athletic or someone is inherently better at math, that's still a racist concept. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I when he went to the athleticism, it made me think about Crystal Dunn, who was one of the U.S. women's national team soccer players, and she's black and she is amazing. But she was talking about when Black Lives Matter first came up about how she gets black people are more athletic and she's more athletic naturally, just erasing all of the work that she's put into what she's done. She's good because of the work she's done, not necessarily because her race is better at athletics than everyone else.
Like, whenever I think about the kind of biological racism, I always kind of go back to like whenever the US is in the Olympics and they always seem to be glorifying this rise out of poverty type of an athletic story. That's like what NBC wants to highlight. It talks about the struggles that the athlete went through when a lot of these struggles are in fact systemic racial struggles.
Mhm.
But it seems to just kind of almost fantasize it
Mhm.
in a way and romanticize like the athleticism that erases the injustice of racism within.
Right. It's that American dream. They made it, and so anyone can make it in America. Absolutely. You hear that a lot during the NFL draft too. Yeah.
and
Instead of saying, hey, this system is messed up, let's work on that. Yeah, that's a great point.
and like it's so crazy because like in my hometown there was a high schooler that got picked to play um, D1 football. Forgot forgot what school. I don't pay attention to sports. Literally, my dad will be like, "Hey, guess who's playing today?" And I'll be like, "Guess what? I don't care." I don't follow sports. I don't pay attention to it. I do not care. It's really bad. It's nothing against the humans that are participating in it. I just hate sports.
Mm,
And it's super hypocritical because I played high school sports like my entire life. But anyway, this athlete, it was while I was doing my undergrad internship at a Title I school. So
okay.
Title I means that it is a school that qualifies for extra federal funding based on the socioeconomic status of its students. So if you are in a poor neighborhood, you can qualify for Title I, which means you get free lunch programs, extra tutoring funds, like extracurricular money from the federal government because schools in the US, public schools, draw a lot of their money from local income taxes.
Yeah.
So if the properties aren't worth as much due to redlining and other racist policies, the schools aren't going to get much money.
Mhm.
Anyways, so this student came out of the school, went to go play D1, and then the student was arrested for shoplifting or fighting or something happened.
Mm.
And I just remember I was working in the junior high and all of the students were just going like, we looked up to that student, like this guy was going to make it, like he like grew up here, like they definitely put that kid on a pedestal and I felt so bad for the entire situation.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, yeah, definitely I see myself in them. If they can make it, I can make it. Still reigns true, even though we're focusing more on the person as opposed to the system. That makes this a continuous story. I mean, I feel since the beginning of time, football has always been I came from nothing and now I have millions. And you still hear those stories to this day, and it drives me crazy because football's been around for so long. Why have we not done anything? Why do we still have these these kids coming from impoverished situations, from bad neighborhoods, and then now they've made it kind of
I,
narrative.
I think a large part of it is the commercialization of professional sports
Mhm.
and the what are you selling? You are selling tickets, you are selling merchandise, you are selling seats to stadiums. Well, not anymore. We're all in COVID. But
Mhm.
like you're selling this idea, this package, and people are paying thousands of dollars for it.
Mhm.
Like I've never been to a pro football game. I don't think I ever want to, but I have sat in a giant stadium before and those things are huge.
Yeah.
A thing of
Yeah.
fries costs $18.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that for college, the stadiums are bigger than for professional because people are more loyal to their alma maters than to professional teams. I mean, our economy, a lot of it is on the backs of these college kids playing a sport that they love.
And that's heartbreaking because it's like that's so much pressure on this kid.
Mhm.
That kid is 18.
Yeah.
Their brain's not even fully developed.
Mhm.
And also, pro sports having an impact on brain development and concussions. I can get into another rant about that. But, like, the idea that this whole athleticism and it being a positive racist trait, it's still racist.
Mhm.
Ugh.
There's no such thing as positive racism, as you mentioned before. It's just, I mean, that takes me back to what the Chick-fil-A owner who said white blessing instead of white privilege.
That was a pastor. That was a pastor. That was a pastor. That was not a Chick-fil-A
That
owner.
was not a Chick-fil-A owner. Okay, I'm thinking about something else. It's so, I mean, trying
That
to put a positive spin on something with no positive spin. Like, there should not even be an attempt to make anything about this positive.
I have a feeling that's a very American thing, though. We
Yeah.
try to spin so many things in a positive light. Like, just look at like our history textbooks, saying like, I don't know what it was like in your state where you went to school, but in my public school history books, they talked about the Civil War being fought over economics, and the
Mhm.
South wanted more economic independence.
Oh, interesting. No, we were taught that it was over slavery. Wow.
I remember one of my teachers jokingly calling the Civil War the War of Northern Aggression.
Wow. Yeah.
Like, it's so bad. Like, the history of this country is so racist,
Mhm.
and that it also just tries to put a positive spin on everything.
Mhm.
Like, toxic positivity, I don't think that all toxic positivity can be classified as having a like, racist foundation, but there are a lot of racist foundations in toxic positivity, in my opinion. I don't know. Like,
Yeah, that's the first I'm hearing of this term toxic positivity, but it definitely encaptures a lot of always wanting everything to be positive. I mean, and look at our media. Everything has to have a happy ending. In other countries, I remember my Spanish teacher, she was telling us that in Spain, all the movies do not have happy endings. Like that is not the case. And I didn't even understand that because I grew up with Cinderella, you know, and all of the happy ending stories where the guy gets the girl and they live happily ever after forever.
evil is defeated.
Yep.
Like, yeah, I think also with like World War II, we talk about, yeah, we defeated the Nazis. They're gone. Guess what? Nazis are still here. And I think that's a good segue into going where they started actually ranking race,
Yeah.
eugenicists, and social Darwinism.
Mm-hmm.
So bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what did you also, the fact that he was aware of that as a third grader?
Mind blown. Absolutely. I don't think I would. I think I would have been so blind at that age. I mean, up until sometimes I feel even now, I'm like, I make an excuse when I shouldn't. So as a third grader, the fact for him to be able to say, hey, she treated my friend differently because she's not one of her white kids is wow. This kid, Kendi as a kid was legit.
Like, the fact that, like, this is a great thing that this guy has a book because I'm like, that is a brilliant third grader right there. Like, what?
Yeah, I found it interesting when he talked about that because two things. One, it made me think like from a social work point of view, he's absolutely right. For any other kid, when he was misbehaving, they would have said, hey, what's going on? They would have tried to be more empathetic, but instead the teacher was just not feeling it and was like, okay, no, I'm getting the principal right now because you're being a problem. And two, it made me think about my brother and his friends as young Black boys in middle school and how they had a hard time with administration and their teachers. It makes me sad that this is so widespread because, and then he said that they treat kids like adults and they treat adults like kids. And I mean, yeah, because I mean, I feel like a third grader, you would normally ask, hey, what's going on? Why don't you want to come with us? And then maybe you can talk and get something productive. But instead, they were like, this kid's being a threat, so we have to deal with him.
Like, they talk about it all the time about the adultification of Black and brown kids.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are so many statistics on, like, kids more likely to be assigned to in school suspension, out of school suspension, get called to the principal's office. Like, there is straight up racial data on this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're not pulling this out of our butts, y'all. We like, this is not just from anecdotal experience. This is cold, hard facts. And he also goes back to talking about how, like, administration wise, the ratio to of white teachers to Black and brown students, it's also very prominent. Like, I can't single I can't single I can't think of a single teacher that I had that was not white
Mm-hmm.
in my entire elementary, junior high, high school career right now. I had
Wow.
coaches,
Yeah.
not teachers.
And any admin, administrators?
Two, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It was maybe a couple all throughout the entire length of being educated under our state supported schools.
And then now that we are like young adults and we are young professionals, seeing how much our Black and brown colleagues struggle against white superiors, like, where does it end? Because you need these teachers and you need these social workers and these role models for students, but then they have to go through just as much, if not worse, crap when they're adults.
Mm-hmm.
We, yeah.
What's the end? Yeah. And then even if you have, because I'm thinking about where I did my internship for undergrad, you had a Black principal, you had like counselors, maybe not administrators, but a couple of Black teachers. And but they're playing into that same system of these kids are being disruptive, these kids are more so problems as opposed to treating them like kids and figuring out what's actually going on. But, if you have a like a Black or brown person in that role but they're not really like they're not really understanding or doing it a little differently because they understand how the system undermines Black and brown kids, then what good is that really?
Like the system undermines not only black and brown kids, it undermines black and brown adults too.
Mhm.
Because like there's tone policing, there is racist, we were talking about racist hair policies, like that works in the workplace. I just saw um it was either Australia or New Zealand had a representative that was an indigenous representative and he refused to wear a tie on the parliament floor. He was
Wow.
kicked out.
Wow.
And his entire stance was professional dress code is inherently racist because who created that? I'm
Mhm.
not allowed to wear the clothes of my heritage and my people while representing my people on the parliament floor.
Mhm.
That is inherently racist.
Yeah.
And it goes into these like things that are such everyday occurrences because we went into internship, we dressed professionally. I had to buy heels.
Yeah. Which I mean, I don't think really helped anyone be more efficient.
No, I rolled my ankle so many times.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, I got lucky and we were able to do business casual, so jeans and a nice shirt. But I mean, we got lucky. That is not the typical experience.
Like it's just crazy to think about that because it's these things that we've accepted as everyday occurrences
Mhm.
happen to be foundationally racist.
Mhm.
Because if you think about
Yeah,
it,
in a
hmm,
go ahead.
oh, I was saying that there was a nonprofit back in my hometown that asked for donations of suits for people to go into job interviews because who can
Mhm.
afford professional clothing?
Mhm. And that's your first view, your first impression. It's so important. Yeah.
So crazy.
Hmm.
What were you gonna say? I'm so sorry.
I don't remember. It'll come back to me.
Like, and then he talks about the Human Genome Project.
Hmm.
Okay, I read this book for my bio class at Baylor, and it was called, oh my gosh, I'm blanking. It's so bad. It talked about the Human Genome Project, and it talked about creationalism versus evolution versus a third option, which was intelligent design. And so I thought it was so interesting how Ibram brought in um, the whole theological perspective from Noah's, like, I guess it was like a bonus chapter. What do you call that? That is not the story of Noah's Ark that we're taught in Sunday school class. It's
Not at
literally
all.
an afterword that you find out as like a teenager if you're still reading the Bible at that point, and you're like, the heck?
Yeah, I did not learn that in Sunday school.
Yeah, like I feel like we could talk about um I think it would be really interesting for us to go through like really popular like Bible study curriculums too with an anti-racist lens.
Definitely.
That could be a fun next project.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. I mean, the Bible definitely talks about, well, as ethnicity, because I'm thinking about like the woman at the well who was like, she was a Samaritan, and like based on the racial or the ethnic vibes of the time, like Jesus is not even talking to her.
Like it's so interesting thinking about like my theological education and by theological education, growing up as a pastor's kid, going to church all the way through the whole life cycle.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not that old, but like, and then I went to a Baptist university for undergrad. So I had to do Christian scriptures and Christian history. But like, thinking about how theology was taught, even if it wasn't intentionally having those racist undertones, like, I do remember hearing the story and studying that story of like Noah's after the ark incident where he cursed Ham, the son that he cursed, and then whenever Ibram goes into the book and is like, some people just assumed he was darker, and that's how they justified race rankings. And I was like, oh, that's so bad.
Mhm.
That's so bad.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I didn't really. I don't know if we didn't talk about that in one school, but we definitely. But I mean, I did grow up in a Baptist church, like predominantly, or if not predominantly, 100% Black. So I guess we would not focus in on that, but that was definitely very interesting how they chose that specific part and then said, okay, well, clearly they're darker. And these are the only people you want to acknowledge were dark. Like Jesus was definitely Black. Can we make that like perfectly clear?
No, he had blue eyes and a goatee, all right? Ah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
crazy.
My understanding was that they used, and I mean, there are multiple ways, but definitely the slaves obey your master scripture was used to help make slavery okay in people's Christian minds.
Oh yeah, also the wives obey your husbands. I got in an
Mm-hmm.
argument with a kid in ninth grade English class about that. He straight up pulled out his Bible in the middle of a public school English class, and I was about to flip my mind.
Light him up, yes, and he deserved it. My understanding, now being a young adult, definitely around the dating scene, the dating scene is that really it's like the toxic, in my experience, the toxic guys who are bringing that up, that wives should submit to their husbands and stuff. It's only the toxic people that you should not be around in any way that are bringing that up.
If someone is using the Bible to justify any form of oppression, they are going to have to strap in because I will take them for a frickin' ride.
Yeah, you know exactly what to say too. I'm really impressed with your understanding of
Oh,
the Bible and Christianity.
thank you. I call it pastor's kid syndrome. Like, there was like Sunday school, and then there was like AP Sunday school, and that's where the pastor's kids hung out. We were the cool kid. No, no. Some of it I think being a pastor's kid did kind of lead me to some questionable like learnings of the Bible, like found out that incest existed before I was probably too old to really know what incest was. So there's a downside to everything.
Definitely.
So back to racism.
Yeah, I'm really thankful that he tied in. I think this is his second time tying in Christianity. No, more than that. So I'm really glad, and I'm really glad he brought in education because I think education is definitely a big, big, big thing that we need to work on because it could be great. Education could be wonderful if we do it correctly, which we have not.
Mhm. Like, the way that the education system is operating currently, the way that it was founded, the foundation that the American education system has, I feel like we need to blow it to smithereens. How do we do that? I don't know. We're already about like 100 years in. But people have blown up systems like that and rebuilt them from the ground up before.
Mhm.
Still working on it. It's
Mhm.
always a work in progress, but ugh.
Yeah, it just needs a whole reboot. I mean, and that's like I think for every system basically in our culture, in our society, because it's all built on racism and discrimination and slavery. So let's just redo it. None of it was meant. I keep saying this. The system's not broken. It was never meant to work.
Mhm.
And so let's just dismantle it all and then start again for a system that is supposed to work for all of us, not just a select few.
I thought it was so interesting how he also mentioned the American Heart Association's 1998 conference about hypertension being higher among Black people than the general population. And they said that it was a genetic and inherent thing. And I was like, huh, what else
Mhm.
causes hypertension? I don't know. Stress, poverty,
Yeah.
uh, nutritional and access to nutrition. Like
Mhm.
like not taking holistic well-being into a singular health issue. Like, come on,
Yeah.
1980 or
Yeah. Yeah. Just completely like overlooking your responsibility as a society and putting people in terrible positions and saying, oh, no, that's just them, which is also very American to blame the people instead of the problem. I mean, we can even talk about climate change right now and how it's going to affect the countries who aren't even necessarily doing the most to make it happen. Mm-hmm.
and the fact that so much of the global system is so focused on appeasing and appealing the Western ideals.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, we're just two girls with a book club. My timer also just hit 30 minutes.
Oh man, that was that fast.
That went by so fast. So we'll see if this pre-recording thing works and uploads. If it does not, I have no clue what's gonna happen.
We'll just keep trying until we find something. But fingers crossed this one. This is it.
Fingers
Fingers
crossed. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording now.